At 2:13 in the morning, a truck driver saw a woman standing alone on a deserted highway. She was wearing a white dress. No car, no phone, no reason to be there. He slowed down. For just a moment, he considered stopping. Then the woman turned her head and smiled. The driver kept going. He didn't stop until he reached a gas station nearly 30 miles away. But when he stepped out of his truck, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. There were wet footprints inside the cab. They started at the passenger door and led directly to the driver's seat. The door had been locked the entire time. The windows were closed, and the driver had been completely alone. At least, that's what he thought, because when he checked the security footage from the gas station, the camera showed something impossible. Someone else had gotten out of his truck, and the figure was wearing white. Tonight, we're going back onto the darkest highways. 3 stories, 3 late-night drivers, and encounters that should have been impossible, because sometimes the most dangerous thing on a deserted highway isn't the road ahead of you. It's the thing that may already be inside your car. Story 1. The woman on the shoulder. The driver had been on the road for hours. It was a cold winter night. The highway was almost completely empty. He was driving through a remote area where the nearest town was miles away. The only light came from his headlights and the occasional reflection of road signs. The time was around 2:13 in the morning. That was when he saw her, a woman standing beside the highway. She was wearing a long white dress. At first, the driver assumed she had been involved in an accident. But there was something strange about the scene. There was no damaged car, no flashing lights, no emergency lights, nothing. Just the woman, standing completely still. The driver slowed down. As he got closer, he noticed that she was facing away from the road. Her long hair covered most of her face. He considered stopping, but something felt wrong, so he continued driving. As his truck passed her, the woman turned her head, slowly, far too slowly. The driver looked in his side mirror and saw her standing in the middle of the road. He immediately stepped on the gas. He didn't stop until he reached a gas station nearly 30 miles away. When he finally pulled in, he was shaking. He got out of the truck, and that's when he noticed something. There were wet footprints on the floor of his truck. They started near the passenger door and continued toward the driver's seat. The driver checked the door. It was still locked. He checked the windows. They were closed. There was no possible way anyone had entered the truck. But the footprints were real, and they were fresh. The driver called the police. They searched the truck. Nothing was found. No person. No explanation. The driver assumed it was some kind of strange coincidence, until he looked at the security camera footage from the gas station. The footage showed his truck arriving. It showed him getting out, but it also showed something else. A second figure getting out of the passenger side. The figure was wearing white, and it walked away into the darkness. The driver had been completely alone. At least, he thought he had been. Story 2. The last exit. The second story happened to a man driving home after a late shift. He knew the highway well. He had driven it hundreds of times. There was one exit he always avoided, not because it was dangerous, but because it was strange. The exit appeared on old maps, but it had been closed for years. The road leading to it was supposed to be blocked. The man knew this, so when he saw the exit sign late one night, he immediately became confused. The sign read, Exit 13. He had never seen it before. The road was empty. The exit was completely open, and something about it seemed to pull his attention toward it. He continued driving, but a few minutes later, he saw the same sign again, Exit 13. The man began to feel uncomfortable. He checked his GPS. The device showed that he was on the correct highway, but the map was frozen. Then the radio stopped working. Every station became static. The man kept driving. A few minutes later, he saw the exit again. This time he made a mistake. He took it. The moment his car left the highway, the entire world seemed to change. There were no streetlights, no buildings, no other cars, just a narrow road surrounded by trees. He drove for several minutes. Then he saw a gas station. It looked old, almost abandoned, but the lights were on. A man was standing outside. The driver stopped. He got out and asked for directions. The man behind the gas station counter stared at him. Then he asked, "What year is it?" The driver thought he was joking. He answered. The old man's face changed. He told the driver to leave immediately. The driver asked why. The old man pointed toward the road and said, "You already missed your exit." The driver didn't understand. Then he looked through the gas station window. There was a car parked outside, an old sedan. The exact same model his father had driven. The same color, the same license plate. The problem was, his father had died years earlier. The driver ran back to his car. He started the engine and drove. He didn't stop. After several minutes, he suddenly found himself back on the highway. The exit sign was gone. The radio began working again. His GPS returned to normal. When he arrived home, he checked the time. Only 20 minutes had passed, but according to his car's clock, he had been gone for almost 3 hours. The next morning, he searched for exit 13. There was no record of it, but he found something else. An old newspaper article. Decades earlier, a family had disappeared on that exact stretch of highway. Their car was never found. The article mentioned the last known location, a road that no longer existed, and the name of the missing driver was the same as the man who had spoken to him at the gas station. Story 3. The passenger in the back seat. The final story is the most disturbing because the driver didn't see anything unusual on the highway. He heard it. It happened during a long night drive. The driver was returning home after visiting family. It was after midnight. He was tired, but not tired enough to stop. The highway was empty. For nearly an hour, he saw no other vehicles. Then he noticed a car behind him. It was an old black sedan. The headlights were dim. The car stayed behind him for several miles. The driver changed lanes. The sedan changed lanes too. He slowed down. The sedan slowed down. Eventually, the driver became uncomfortable. He pulled into a rest area. The black sedan continued past him. The driver waited. After a few minutes, he got back on the highway. The sedan was gone. He thought nothing more about it until he heard a sound, a soft tapping from behind him. The driver looked in the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. He assumed it was something inside the car, maybe a loose object. Then he heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time it sounded like someone tapping on the inside of the rear window. The driver turned on the interior light. Nothing. He checked the back seat. There was no one there. He continued driving. A few minutes later, the tapping started again, but now it was coming from behind the passenger seat. The driver began to panic. He looked at the mirror and saw something, a pale face, sitting in the back seat. The driver immediately turned around. There was nobody there. He slammed on the brakes. The car stopped on the shoulder. He jumped out. He opened the back door. The seat was empty, but there was something lying on the floor. A small child's shoe. The driver had never seen it before. He called the police. They arrived and searched the vehicle. The shoe was taken as evidence. The driver was told there was no explanation for how it had gotten inside. He had been alone. The doors had been locked. The windows had been closed. But the story became even stranger. The police later discovered that a young girl had disappeared from that highway many years earlier. The last place she had been seen was near the same rest area where the driver had stopped. The girl's family had searched for her for years. She was never found. The shoe discovered inside the car was the same type of shoe she had been wearing when she disappeared. But the most terrifying detail came later. The driver checked the security footage from the rest area. The video showed his car arriving. It showed him getting out. It showed him walking around the vehicle. And then something appeared in the back seat. A pale figure, sitting perfectly still. The figure remained there for almost 6 minutes. Then the driver opened the back door, and the figure disappeared. The driver never drove that highway again, but he said something followed him home. For several weeks afterward, he heard tapping every night, always from the back seat, even though the car was parked outside, even though the doors were locked, and even though there was nobody inside. There are thousands of miles of highways across the country. Most of them are ordinary. People drive them every day. They go to work. They visit family. They travel home. But late at night, when the roads become empty, the highway can feel like something else entirely. A place between destinations. A place where strange things happen. Sometimes it's a person standing beside the road. Sometimes it's an exit that shouldn't exist. And sometimes it's a passenger you never picked up. So the next time you're driving alone after midnight and you see someone standing on the shoulder, you may feel tempted to stop. But before you do, look carefully. Make sure there are footprints. Make sure there is a car nearby. And most importantly, make sure the person is actually standing outside your vehicle. Because sometimes the scariest part of a late night drive is realizing that you may not be alone. This is the Hidden Fear Archive, and some stories are better left unexplained. Until next time, keep your lights on, keep your doors locked, and whatever you do, don't look too long into the back seat. because you never know who might be looking back.